Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Anitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over at twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it's also uploaded as a YouTube video under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu, as well as being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Feel free to leave a rating, like, follow, subscribe, and review, depending on your platform that you're listening to, for supporting the podcast. It really does help us a lot. Today, I am with my teammates, Nikki and Guardian, and we're going to be talking about the BT15 meta. Now that we have a decent amount of events under our belts, we could actually start looking at the bigger picture on its overall direction. So we had two events this past weekend. We had the Nest Latin American Regional, and we also had the TAC Sydney Regional. So just to kind of brush over these pretty quickly, because if you're interested on finding all of the information, I'm just pulling it up from eggmanevents.com. He even has links to the deck lists and all of that good information there. So I'm just going to be pulling up the Nest regional information first. So we have a pretty diverse top 16. I think the Nest actually had some of the best diversity when it comes to top 16s compared to the others that we had so far. So as far as the archetype breakdown, we had 2 Mirage, 2 Numemon, 2 Shine, 2 Levia, 2 Lugamon. Then we had 1 Diva, 1 Yellow Vaccine, 1 Red Hybrids, 1 Bloomlord, 1 Metal Gurumon, and 1 Megazoo, which the Megazoo deck is actually Dark Masters. So with that, the winner was a Mirage Gaugamon. So nice to see Mirage is still super competitive. Then on top of that, we had in second place also Mirage Gaugamon. Then third and fourth is Divas and Numemon. Then the top 8 is Numemon, Yellow Vaccine, Shine Greymon, and Leviamon. Then ninth place is Red Hybrids, 10th Lugamon, 11th Bloomlord, 12th Metal Gurumon, 13th is that Megazoo deck, the Dark Masters. 15th is Lugamon, 14th is Lugamon, 15th is Leviamon, and 16th is Shine. So I think, like, all of these decks we've basically seen before. We know exactly what they're doing. They're not really doing anything too wow-worthy to kind of just go over in depth. The only one that I actually think is wow-worthy is the Dark Masters Megazoo deck. So this is a deck that a lot of people kind of wrote off because this is the deck that uses Apocalypse and all of the Dark Masters pieces. So the idea is you're just going to hard play your level 5s, Evo into your level 6, and then Evo into your level 7, and that's kind of it. You're just trying to get to your level 7 as quickly as possible. And I built this deck online. It's actually fairly similar to the one that I built. I think the only big difference is they're actually using Omnimon Alter B, which he can digivolve on top of other Omnimons, which is pretty good considering the majority of what you're running in terms of your level 7s is Omnimon, between Omnimon's Wart Defeat, and Merciful Mode. Then they just have Death X for good measure because why not? It's basically a free card to throw in. And then Apocalypse because, you know, you can only run one and you're still running a whole bunch of Dark Masters and Dark Master support cards. The big thing is they're playing with some aces as well, just because taking a page from Divas, aces are actually really strong, especially the level 6s that we have. So they're using Zukwai Ace, which I think is like the most interesting one because it only has Lady Devi that it could digivolve off of, where at least Ebon Wormmon has Cherry and Lady Devi, and then Mega Gargamon from the starter deck has Gigadramon and Cherrymon as well to be able to ace from. But it's just a really solid deck that, you know, is playing the game a little bit differently. Nice to see that it actually is able to top in the right hands. In terms of the event size, it was 128 players, 6 rounds of Swiss into a top cut for the top 8 players. So all in all, pretty decent, but nothing earth-shattering. Then to just quickly go into the Sydney, before we start talking about some of these decks. So Sydney is a little bit more of what I actually would have expected. Um, 4 Sovereigns did end up winning the event. It was also the deck that took the majority of top 16s in terms of the archetype breakdown, because we had 3 Diva decks, 3 Red Hybrids, 3 Leviamon. Not any shocker there. Then we had 1 Mega Gargamon, which probably is one of the more shocking things, along with Alphamon, Machine Dramon, Armor Rush, and then back to normality with Numemon, Shine, and Mirage. So pretty decent in terms of the actual top 16. Like I said, Divas won, Mega Gargamon got in second, Divas got third, Red Hybrids in fourth, Alphamon in fifth, Leviamon X in sixth and seven. The last Divas is in eighth, Machine Dramon's in ninth, another Red Hybrid in 10th and 11th. Then in 12th, we have the Armor Rush, a Numemon, a Shine Greymon for 13 and 14, Leviamon in 16 or 15, and Mega Gargamon in 16. This was about the same amount of players, 126. This was 7 rounds of Swiss, no top cut. So just a little bit of a difference there. But in terms of the decks that actually are of interest, I'm just going to be highlighting the Terriermon deck for a hot second. I don't think this deck is like that unknown. It's just they were running a couple of tech cards that were pretty spicy. So they were running a Merciful Mode, obviously because purple is really big and a lot of grave trash is huge. So a way to hose on that is pretty decent. And then the biggest tech choice is the Fire Rocket for the level 4s. So Fire Rocket just gives your Digimon Security Attack Plus. Pretty good. And Security Ability deletes a blocker. Again, pretty good. You can only use it with your level 4s, but if you have your level 4s out, you actually can use it with your other levels as well. So you could throw it on your level 5 and your level 6, as long as you have that ability to activate it with the level 4s. So pretty strong card overall.
It should be noted that the gimmick of that, like, if you have the memory or you keep the rapid,
Yeah,
you
just
activate
digivolve
rapid. Yeah, just give rapid the fire rocket, then go straight into Gargo.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is so easy in getting Armor Rapids out, it's like actually ridiculous, which is why the Mega Gargamon Ace is as strong as it is, because it could go off of level 4 or 5. The interesting choice that they're deciding to make is they're only running 2 agility trainings, so most decks generally run 3 to 4 because they always want to see that card. But I guess because of the Willises, it kind of makes sense why they wouldn't run as many. And then I do think like the Henry Mimi split, like just running some of both is just really good. They are playing a Heaven's Judgment and a Giant Missile for removal. I think removal is like really important, and right now, because a lot of Digimon have like on deletion effects or want to be in the trash, putting them in the trash is not that great, so I can totally understand Giant Missile over Heaven's Judgment.
Yeah, as far as the agility train, though, I think it's actually more falling back to the unique option within this deck of the Double Typhoon, which does so much more than the ability training. By going 1 memory further, they go 1 card deeper and have potential to search out 2 different cards, on top of the delay of playing out one of their Digimon, say a Terrier or a Lop, on the upcoming turn. Usually they'll throw out the Terrier that lets you do a search for any dual color card that's green, which is 90% of the deck.
Yeah, and they're electing to use both searchers, both from EX4 and from BT8. I know a lot of decks generally will only run 1 searcher, and then they'll just run more of the BT3 Terriermon just because it's a floodgate that is in archetype, so it's just a no-brainer. But they're electing to run 1 of the floodgate and 1 Lotmon, which most people will just delegate that 1 extra space to an extra Lotmon. So it's interesting that they're actually playing the split. It makes sense because Lotmon just makes your evolutions worse. That is just a fact because all your cards care about Rapid Mono name. But they're actually not playing the starter deck Gargamon as well. So they're
Mm-hmm.
just raw rapid, which I don't think is wrong. That's where probably the extra rookie space comes from, is because they're just trying to double Typhoon, play rookie, search out rapid, play rapid, and just kind of go from there. So
Yeah.
it makes sense.
It's also a reason why if you look at the Henry, they're not playing the Biomerge Henry. They've gone to regular Mem Setter just because it gives that ability when you Digivolve into Rapid or Gargo or Mega Gargo to suspend and let you kill something.
No,
Yeah.
that's if you attack.
Yeah,
Not when
that's
you
that's
kill.
when you attack, which the Mega Garga Ace can just restand and swing into the Digimon. So it does have the ability to use Henry. So it is playing a little bit more into that control aspect. I personally like the Biomerge, but this person's
Yeah.
obviously proving me wrong. That's why
They're
they're
also
also
on one Lotmon, which like is wild to me because like Lotmon is how you get those extra checks.
yeah,
But
because
Fire Rocket
Lotmon's
does
where
kind of
Alliance
do
is
that same
coming from.
thing.
Well, the reason why they're on one Lotmon is because of the Fire Rockets. Now they have different ways to be able to give Security Tech Plus.
And
Plus,
if
they're
you stab it,
playing the old Terriermon too. They have two different ways to find a Henry.
Yeah.
we just mentioned that.
What?
Yeah.
I think I skipped
All in
that
all, I think
portion.
like this iteration is not a bad direction for the deck, considering we've had a couple of events where it just did absolutely nothing. I don't necessarily know if it's because people are still trying to get the cards in order, or if the deck just isn't that good until BT16. I mean, I know it's a lot better in BT16, but I don't think it's like insanely weak right now.
No, it's not insanely weak at all. In BT16, you're basically just cutting out the level 5 overall because both your 8, your Mega Gargo Ace, and your Rapid X are going to be able to go on top of your Rapid Mons,
Yeah, I
which
mean, you still
just says
probably would
you
run
have
the
more room.
rapid. Yeah, it's just you would have to shift the build to incorporate it a little bit more. But right now, it seems like they're just delegating all that extra space to more rookies and really doubling down on Double Typhoon. But overall, good on Rapidmon. And speaking of armor decks, um, this is a
Are
deck
we
I
really going to talk
basically
about that elephant in the room?
the Vmon armor. This is the deck that surprised me the most because I was playtesting with the deck and I was like, this deck is just hot garbage and does absolutely nothing until you get into your level 7s. Because the big problem with Magnamon X is the deck has actually no way to increase his DP outside of digivolving him on top of BT7. So you have to like digivolve
8.
onto BT8. So you have to digivolve into BT8 to get the DP to then digivolve into Magna X in order to have any like actual strength. Otherwise, the card is just almost a vanilla 11k that when he dies he just goes into security. But because DP is actually starting to matter, it's like, is this card actually that good? The answer is no, but he's interesting because he's just still a pretty decent card at shutting off some early game aggression, which Numemon does very well. So it's like you get up into him and then he basically single-handedly shuts down Numemon. But against a lot of other decks, he basically does almost nothing, which is why I wrote the deck off, because without the level 7s, you're just not even playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh,
obviously their build is using more of a Rookie Rush-esque style, because you got your Ukamons and then you got an actual metric butt ton of rookies, similar to the Terriermon deck that we just saw, where it's just like you have your two searchers. So you have your Vmon from BT12 and your Vmon from the starter deck as your two main searchers. They're running less of the starter deck one. And then you also have for Evolution the promo Vmon, and you can't play Armor Deck without jamming Vmon as like the main aggro card, because like getting that free swing early on is like super good because the deck just needs that chip damage, and then you could just digivolve into an armor and be totally fine. And then
mm-hmm.
you got your Ukamons to round out the deck to really turbo your raising area. Then the Magnas are basically all what you would expect, just all the Magnas we have. No really questions there. And then they are taking notes from BT16 and running a couple of level 5 aces. So they're running 2 Zudos and 1 Wereguru just to try to have alternative ways to stop the opponent. I think the ace isn't that bad because if you Digivolve into Magnamon X and give him his protection, so it makes it very hard for him to leave the field with Awakening or just with Protoform. So that way you could get full benefits of the redirect, and then if he dies, you don't lose the overflow because he just diverts back into the ace. So I like that spiciness of it. That's just how the card works, though. But the level 5 aces just are extra points of aggression, or you could just hard slam them because they're cheap cards to hard play. Then they're running a heavier removal package. They're running 2 full meteors, or full moon meteor. Impact is just the best bounce spell. Again, you don't want to go wholeheartedly into Heaven's Judgment because deleting stuff is bad, and full moon doesn't delete, it bounces. Then you got 1 Awakening and 1 Protoform, just because they're good cards that make Magna X better. You got your 1 BT3 Davis is just a good generic searcher. You got your Promo Davis because this card's absolutely cracked on just how good it is. And then you also have your Louis to be able to accelerate your raising play because they're on 4 Ukos. So I think, like, as the deck is, it just makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a pretty good deck. It's just surprising to see it win because I just wrote it because when I was testing it, if you didn't have a level 7, you weren't actually playing the game.
So, no, I tested this early on against Nick, and it wasn't horrible. I was obviously on the high amounts of the Heaven's Judgment because he decided to be a jerk and play bugs against me. Screw you still, Nick.
To be fair, unless you have the bottom deck, you kind of just wall stuff. Like, Tyrant can't kill you because you have fake Purge into real Purge.
Yeah.
And Tyrant can't hit because you're just gonna go, no, I'm gonna make you hit me, and then we're gonna stall out for like forever.
Well, that's BT16. So in BT15, like BT16, obviously the deck gets better, but in BT15, I think like the deck still is kind of in a really awkward space where you're just trying to play chip control, where it's just like I'm gonna have my VMons passively come out, swing, be aggressive, get up into like 1 or 2 good defensive bodies and try to control the field from there. That's like my interpretation of this. Because they're playing Shine Greymon Ruin mode, which to me screams control. Like otherwise,
That's
think that
kind of this meta though is just Ruin mode is seeing a resurgence because it is a control-based meta.
No, it deals with wide boards very easily. Because the only other level 7s that you would think about running is BT5 Omnimon, obviously for that unsuspend and swing, because of Blitz. And then there is the similar move that you can make with Jesmon GX, which does more damage, so most people just run Jesmon GX. But because they're going Ruin mode, it definitely means that they want to go more control heavy. Which makes sense because if you're just passively raising out and chipping with your rookies or level 4s, like, sure, you want to make sure that you have some top end to stop the opponent from doing whatever they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, that's another really interesting deck. And then I know people are really curious about Alphamon because we haven't seen Alphamon in a while. And shocker, Alphamon's literally doing nothing different. Literally nothing different. The only difference is Protoform to get a cheaper evolution. That's it. The real secret behind the deck's success is actually Final Zubagon Punch because, you know, security tech, blocker, reboot, all very good things on top of a good DP buff. It's still just the same OTK base deck that we've been playing around with for a while.
I can go for this, honestly, considering I have done this many times against my friends. That 5-finger slap across the face.
To be fair, I feel like you should be playing one more Protoform, but that's whatever.
No, I agree with you on that one. Protoform actually, in the right situations is very good in Alphamon for the
The
fact that,
problem is Alphamon just loses to like if the one stack gets destroyed. So like
well,
I
it
would say
depends
just
on your
another
alpha.
protoform just so that way you have it when you're making your OTK stack. Because again, if something goes wrong and you die or something, at least you can recover the one piece. Because Alphamon likes to X evolve, so half the time your one piece is on the stack, and now you just lost it. Now you
Well,
can't
there's
reclaim.
like
Hmm.
thinking about the list, like and looking at it, there's like not really a whole lot of room for it because Congo
You
is
can
your
take
good
Ryuta
like
down.
passive play. I don't know if that's the play though, but
I
um
mean, me personally, I only played that guy like one, so I could lose it and not care,
I mean, I
honestly.
guess like you could go from 11 to 12 because this is an OTK based deck, so you just need to see your like a rookie, and in this deck it kind of just doesn't matter. Obviously, Ryuta is the worst one, but Ryuta also is the only way you're searching Yuji, which the deck still plays because that's how the combo works. Is Yuji sticking Oryu underneath? Now he has an extra free attack, um, but outside of some minor tech choice differences in terms of ratios. Alphamon literally is doing nothing different, and it's still just as strong as when we last looked at it. And
Well,
then you could kind of say the same with Machine German as well, because Machine German's one of those decks where it is really hard to lock down a build for because of just how awkward it is of a deck, but it obviously can still do well given the right matchups and the right scenarios.
yeah.
So that's currently what those two events have
The
done.
hell is this monstrosity?
What?
Go back. I want to see that.
Well, oh, the Machine German deck.
As I looked up for a second, I was like, "What is that?"
Yeah, so the Machine German is just playing a little bit more into um not necessarily needing blocker so it could leave room for other things. So like you
This is a
have
war crime.
Kokuamon as your blocker inheritable, and then you just
Mhm.
have a whole bunch of reboot inheritables as well. Um it's real interesting that they're not playing Marvin. I think Marvin is like really good for the deck, but instead they're
I also
choosing to
see they're
play
not playing.
Supreme
Oh no, there it
Connection.
is.
Yeah, they're playing
Oh,
Supreme Connection and Mega Gargamon, so that way you could be like, okay, yeah, Attack of the Heavy Mobile for Mega Gargamon, and he's just an alternative machine you could play for cheap. And it seems
So
like
the
they're just
thing
trying to
is,
go more for the EX1
so you
machine.
you actually can't Attack of the Heavy Machine the Gargoyle, unfortunately. You have
Uh,
to have a source.
oh, yeah, you do.
So it just be
No,
the
you
Gargoyle is just
Supreme
there if
Connection
you
it
get.
out. Yeah, you Supreme Connection it out for 4.
I mean that, or if because a lot of the time Mashidramon's just gonna stick on the 5 because they can't find like a lot of like again you're gonna climb up and you just don't have the memory to like make the 6 at the same time as your 5 if you're climbing traditionally without like at least 2 trainings or like a boost. So you can just let them swing at you and just go, no, I'm gonna ace here, and now I'm off to the races.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
swear this kind of copium has me going for Massimo. Yes.
yeah,
Like
because
the main thing is
they're
it's a
really just
slam deck
banking
though.
on the ace trying to hard carry the first
Mm-hmm.
initial stack if it's a really bad stack, because
Mm-hmm.
like you can't stick multiple inheritables into them, so it's like whatever you put into them, that's kind of it. There's some good targets, but it just feels kind of weak to me.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. But then again, it's also Machine Dramon. It hasn't topped in a while, so
I mean, he stopped once before in this meta,
I said
but
in a while.
yeah.
I mean, he's top before, like in this meta. I think he had just like one top in 15. It's just because people aren't expecting it due to the new package. Like you can, people have to. It's a little bit of cope. You have to know what you're doing. You can't
Yeah.
just put it together and pray to God.
Because he last topped in the Adventure series, which was that awkward like mid format where the Rapidmon starter decks don't exist, but the ban and restriction does. So I kind of wrote off the that event because it's playing under a slightly different meta. Because obviously, as we just saw with the attack regional, Mega Gargamon actually does have an impact, and the Terriermon cards do matter. So, but getting into some of the more big picture data, I kind of have little images that kind of just show the current state of the meta. Let me see if I can bring that up in a meaningful way. Digimon, here we go. Okay. So hopefully that's looking pretty ugly, but pretty. So as far as the 4 major events, we had Core, Raid, Tech, and the Latin American one. I'm always the Nest. There we go. And looking at like the meta spread, obviously we have like 20 decks that are currently playable, which is good. But if we actually look at the decks, I'd probably say only 11 of them are actually consistently topping. So like a lot of decks are just, they got lucky. They're one-ofs, which is shown in this image, where you have like the number of decks, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so out of 20 decks, 11 of them so far have gotten only 1 win under their belt, which to me is basically got lucky territory. I'm not saying like they can't do well, because obviously they made it into top 16 to begin with. It's just how often are we likely to see them come back is the real question.
As a result of that question, I'm going to say not very likely, considering how this meta is sort of shifting around.
Right. That's kind of where I'm at as well. Like, I don't honestly think Armors is going to be topping again. Mega Gargamon has a higher chance to top, but people still got to mess around with that build and, play it. I think just the sheer accessibility of it means that it could end up topping again, but I think because a lot of people are just waiting for BT16 for that deck, they're just getting it now just to get it, and then they know it's going to be broken later. But as far as like the actual forerunners of the meta, it's obviously Leviamon, Numemon, and Red Hybrids. Those are the 3 big cornerstones. If I had to like actually say which one was the best outside of like my data spread, because if I include the Adventure series, Numemon is obviously number 1, then Leviamon at number 2, and Red Hybrids at number 3.
The Red Hybrid has always been kind of the sleeper in all these kind of metas when it comes around like this.
You just hit hard, you hit fast. If you people have to adapt to, I'm going to get hit for like 2 checks either, for like 2 checks turn 1 or technically turn 2. Like the moment I see a hybrid, I need to be able to be like, I'm gonna be taken for 2 security here. I need to like go now. I can't wait. Everyone else is like setting up still.
It also has like a lot of really good tech cards to handle the meta. So like you still have your Bukamon and Nemon tech cards that sometimes pop up every now and then. You definitely can use Ukamon, which is one of the big new forerunners in terms of like how fast the deck can go. Then you even have 2 aces that you can think about using. Garurumon Ace helps play the Tamer, and Metal Greymon Ace I think people just stopped using because the removal's not that great. It can come in handy, but it's not insane. And then he just has lots of good efficient ways to kill the opponent. And because he's in red, you could tech in red floodgates, which almost all of the red floodgates are really good at this point. And then you obviously have Omnimon Finish, or just another blitz for consistency. Because you're in red, you also have Crimson Blaze to shut down the opponent from playing Digimon for free, which a lot of decks do. So that effect definitely matters. On top of being removal. It's just the deck has some weaknesses that I think people aren't necessarily exploiting, which I think his meta matchups might get worse, because Divas is one of those decks where I was having a hard time picking my deck at the beginning of this format. I still technically am not locked onto a single deck for this format, and one of the decks I was actually contemplating about building was Divas, because thinking about it, it actually has some pretty decent matchups into Numemon, Leviamon, and Red Hybrid. So no wonder why it's seeing some of the more consistent success because it has some really good matchups into the top 3 decks. Leviamon just simply can't get rid of it unless they Biting Crush it. That's like their only way. On top of the fact that you're not playing into Leviamon's strategy at all. Like, you give him almost nothing to be able to revive because everything is like level 5 and higher. So, like, you are really severely limiting what Leviamon could even do against you. And then your Fanglong can just start wrecking shop once it gets to the late stages of the game. Numemon and Red Hybrids, because they're both aggro decks, they just die to your aces, which is hilarious. And Azulong Ace is like absolutely cracked in this format because it deals with both Red Hybrids and Numemon insanely well, on top of a lot of other things. But yeah, so that's like, if I had to pick an anti-meta deck, Leviamon is, or Divas and Fanglong is definitely up there, considering that's like the 4th best deck just underneath it. And then we still have Lugamon, Mirage, Yellow Vaccine, Shine Greymon, and Marcus Yellow Hybrids. That might be a fad. It did well like twice, and that's kind of it. But twice is more than once, and it was in 2 different events, so that must mean something.
Yeah, I think it just overall means that no matter what'll happen, Mirage will always come out of the woodworks.
Mirage is just good for controlling tempo. Like it just plays the game on its own. Like, I'm going to shrink your security and try to control you on like the build up. A lot of decks, like barring like obviously the annoying quick ones. Like, Hybrid just loses to the Zudo. That's like the main thing Mirage has against the Hybrid matchup. But Hybrid can win against Mirage if they don't open anything good to combat, like, turn 2, gain 3 memory, 2 checks. I'm just gonna like set it up so that next turn I'm gonna hit you for like 4 checks and then I win.
Mm-hmm.
I just think blue right now is just such a strong underrated color, just because a lot of the top 3 decks are abusing the trash, want on delete effects to trigger, and are like just, they're really banking on just abusing certain aspects of the game that like blue can kind of shut down, because especially Mirage, more specifically, because Mirage punishes the opponent for drawing if you get into an early Mirage, which that anti-tempo swing is like absolutely game warping in terms of like how well a Mirage can do. And like you said, the aces just make playing into that easier and faster. On top of the fact that like blue is bouncing, so it's not actually deleting. So it's not putting things actively into the trash versus a lot of other decks. So it's not feeding into any of the top 3 decks' game plans. And I think that's another huge aspect to why Mirage is still a very like consistent topping deck. On top of obviously the big fact that it's an OTK deck. So you just sit around, do nothing, and then wait for the opponent to not kill you, and then kill the opponent in one go. So there's also that aspect to it, which is why it's performing better than every other blue deck, is because it actually has the bite to back up its bark. And Melga does. It's just a lot harder now, which is why it hasn't seen the same level of success. But yellow, towards the bottom end of like the current defining like top decks, yellow's just insane. Like, I don't know how to say it. Yellow has actually some of the best tempo tools in the game.
Honestly, they need to stop.
It's mostly
This is coming
Patamon.
from a yellow player.
It's mostly just Patamon. Like, Patamon is just such a broken card that like it's borderline unfair, because Patamon, you raise out, search your security, and then can digivolve into a level 4 for free, ignoring cost. So you're abusing that with like Rapidmon to digivolve for free when that costs 4. You had Geogray, which costs 3 to digivolve for free. And then the dumb part is, because Patamon's inheritable sees the card being removed from security or going back in or whatever, it gains you the memory. So it's a free evolution that gains you a memory that if you also had TK on the field, will also gain you another memory. It's like actually stupid. So you raised out, got a free evolution and +2 memory. Like no other color can do that. Like green was known for having the best tempo, and this puts green to shame. Like this makes green look embarrassed.
It only gets worse, honestly, as we go further into the sets, but that's gonna have to be neither here nor there on that one.
Yeah. And like I honestly think like maybe Patamon is going to get limited. I don't think any of the top end cards need to get limited considering all of the yellow vaccine decks, all three of them, were using completely different top ends. And we're playing into like slightly completely different playstyles as a result, because your top end dictates what kind of like middle end you're going to be playing. The low end is all the same. It's literally all the same. You're playing Patamon, you're playing Kudamon, and then your last four options is kind of just whatever. It doesn't matter. People are playing like Salamon or Floodgates, and that's kind of it. So,
Yeah.
like, the low end is all the same. It's the level 4s and 5s is kind of where it gets different based on the level 6s. So, like, I know that I lost to Mitamamon, and they were running Venusmon with Mitamamon. I have seen the Magnetdramon and Seraphimon as another combination. And then I've seen like something else with just a whole bunch of mishmash level 6s. And like, it's just crazy the amount of flexibility that Yellow Vaccines has that really just is insanely hard to deal with and predict what you're going to be playing. Like, or playing against.
Yeah.
And then Shine Greymon is basically Shine Greymon. That deck hasn't changed. It's probably not going to change for a while. It's just a very solid, strong, consistent deck that could use both training cards. So you do have, like, obviously the ability to be aggro or controlling, depending on, like, what egg you play. So,
Yeah, okay, hold up on that for a second, Zen. In gray, I agree that the starter deck 17-18 is going to be crazy as it comes out. But as far as Ukumon getting limited or banned, I don't see it happening because of how it reacts with the game state. Both of them, both 16 and promo, because they have to come out of the raising in order to get their effects. So it's honestly easy for you to get rid of them afterwards. So
no, but
as far
the
as them getting
problem
limited or banned, I don't see that happening.
No, the problem with Ukamon and why it's so strong, and it's single-handedly carrying Numemon. Like between that, Numemon X and Monzemon X, those are the three cards that are enabling Numemon to be as strong as he is. So, like, yes, Ukamon is going to be a sitting duck once you move out, but once you move out, you just don't care because he resets your raising area, on top of the fact that he already generated you the value you were looking for. So most of the time, like as a red hybrid player, I use Ukamon, raise out, gain that memory, swing with Ukamon. Do not care if he lives or dies. If he lives and he gives me a whole nother turn, the opponent is that much more screwed because they weren't able to get rid of him. And if he dies, again, I don't care. I already got the value from him. And that initial value is the problem with Ukamon for both 16 and promo. 16 is arguably worse than promo because it's just another consistency tool. It's just, yeah, let me just search, and then next turn, if he lives, search again, and again, and it just becomes a cascading problem.
So hear me out. I don't think they're gonna hit 16 Uko. For one, okay, I was gonna say because they won't hit a high rarity card, but Bandai already went.
Yeah,
against
he's a rare. Are you kidding me?
But he's needed for the decks that play on the field rather than the raising. They're meant for the decks that like I don't build, I spread, or I play a gimmicky plan. Dark Knightmon, Boggermon, Armor Rush. These are decks that are like
yeah, anything that doesn't actually need a rookie.
Exactly, and like that's where the like Masty is a big example. Like you don't need the egg. Like we're gonna be playing 4s, 5s, and that's our game plan. We just need something to help us out, and Uko is what was needed, not the promo. The promo, like
the promo helps, It's
it
just the other
grew
one
on
that's
me,
better.
but I still kind of say like one memory, one raising. It's like whatever. The searching for what I need is really strong, but the other problem is for the decks that needed that consistency, unless you were building, it doesn't matter. Like Mirage, sure, I could look for whatever piece I needed, but I'm white now. I can't like just Evo on top. I can't just, oh, I'm gonna go into my hybrid and kill you. It's like, oh, I'm stuck here. I'm stuck at a rookie that I can't Evo on top of. Like
Mhm.
cross decks, like blue flare, like these kind of decks were like, I just needed the consistency. I just needed something. Like if it swings and lives, I could care less. Those are the decks that needed this support. Like Machine Dramon with the Nukamon, especially with Supreme Connection, kind of goaded.
Yeah,
I could
no,
see it
I
happening.
have a video that I'm gonna be making on my issue with the promos and why it's so hard to
Mhm.
like warrant their limitation. I think the only one that actually warrants its limitation is the training cards because I actually think those are stupid and they're fulfilling the same exact role as the memory boosts, just better on steroids. Um, and Ukamon, like I do think Ukamon is a problematic card, but he has things that are going on that Bandai obviously doesn't want to get rid of because you have big Ukamon and they like for whatever reason are just like, okay, if it has support that's meaningful and there's no other alternatives or replacements, we're most likely going to try not to hit him. Like we know Dark Masters is at least getting some support and because of the playstyle of Dark Masters, we have alternative ways to be able to use the cards to still make the deck playable, as we just saw with the topping list. Um, but I do think like if anyone actually watches my content, I just made like a huge problems with the current state of Digimon video. I wrote that script like back in EX5, so please forgive the fact that it is more in reference to EX5 rather than what's coming out. Um, and I think a lot of people misunderstood that video too. Like for as many views as I got a lot more um not necessarily backlash, but a lot of people just seeming to not understand the point of the video. Like I'm not trying to criticize the meta in that video. I think like obviously when we have 20 playable decks and more can still top because this format is definitely not over. I took a note and this format we have for the rest of BT15 17 events left in BT15. 17 total events. Granted, this is spread across all the regions, both online and in person, and it's also including Ultimate Cup because Ultimate Cup isn't going to be using any like funky rules, as well as regionals. But between all of that, we have 17 more events of data to look at. So this is just the start of where BT15 is going to be. And I think like just already having 20 playable decks is really good. But in my video, I kind of highlighted that there are just some innate problems which certain decks that are topping are abusing right now, which is obviously delay options, Ukamon, and the trash. More specifically, because we don't have any interaction for delay options. So the more you could abuse them, the better. Leviamon definitely abuses delay options and the trash. So it's already two aspects into why it's so good and so successful, as well as just some the more stupid things that you could do with it, like free evolutions, all the memory cheating. Like the deck is just actually disgustingly stupid. Not as much as Anubis, but it's still pretty egregiously bad in terms of its overall design on how strong it is. And Numemon is no better because, again, it's another deck that's abusing the trash. It doesn't have delay options, but instead of delay options, it has Ukamon. So it's just like, it's still hitting two of those key pet factors that are making decks insanely successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this also goes back to a previous discussion we had when it was with Headless. I don't know if we did it online or not, but yeah, we need something to deal with delay options.
Yes.
Just a Digimon, an option. I'm all for bringing in the Eaters from Cyber Sleuth as like options or Digimons to where they specifically target delay options and certain types of Digimon as they do in said game.
I think the problem with the eaters is there's not enough eaters, unlike Mother
The D
and D
Reaper.
Reapers, where there's
Yeah.
actually enough. There's like 3 different types of eaters, and that's it.
At least
Alright.
give us like we had the plugins, but like a Digivice or something like I don't know, like we don't have a lot of like good like all the options are situational. Like we have the plugins, we have the trainings, we have all.
Oh no, there's
these
9
options
eaters.
Oh, there's 9 eaters.
instead of having
So
X
you could
Digimon.
kind of get away with it a little bit better.
Like aces were already part of the hand traps we had, but the problem with the aces is that some of them are really overtuned and some of them aren't tuned enough to kind of like compete. And what I mean is like
Pseudo
level
Ace being
5
absolutely
aces-
disgusting.
level 5 aces are either super strong or super mid. Zudo, super strong, reliable, I love him. Metal Greymon Ace. Who?
Yeah, then you get
Garudamon
Angelomon.
Ace?
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
Angelomon Ace, which is another like absolutely busted ace. Even Magnet Angemon Ace is still a very strong ace. And then you get like Lilymon's
Lilymon.
okay. She's just
Yeah.
not. She's more specific.
It's because they have like some colors you can tell are just bad because they're like certain requirement needed, but then other colors are just like, yeah, if you have no sources, I'll just bounce you. You get minus 8k anytime I recover. Depending on how much security, you get like -1. Like even my Otismon Ace is a good card in theory. Just like, oh yeah,
Myosmon's
revive
kinda
a
weak,
level
though.
3 or a tamer, and I'm a blocker. That's pretty strong. But in its own deck, it's like, I need to kill it, but I don't really want to overflow.
Yeah, that's the awkward part. Like, I do think, obviously, not all aces are created equally, and as such, not all colors are created equally, but, like, going back to, like, my video and relating it to the meta, which was the whole point, obviously, those big elements are what's currently defining the meta, and before we had those types of cards, though it obviously wasn't defining the meta, and I think the speed wasn't necessarily that much more jacked up because they used to operate like decks used to operate on 3 memory. Like they would design specific combinations of cards, like the a traditional evolutionary line, to fully function on you starting at 3 memory. I'm going to start at 3 memory to be able to do my thing. Now you need 1 memory. I'm just like, that's a huge jump. 2 memory, they just completely skipped the need for 2 memory and they went right into 1 memory. So like this is where yellow is just that disgusting because like I honestly feel like Patamon needs to be hit. I could see TK getting hit, but I don't think he's realistically going to get hit. And then I do think Emissary needs to get hit because like between Patamon and Emissary, for 1 memory, you could go all the way up into your level 6 and still keep turn. I think that's absolutely ridiculously stupid.
Yeah, agree on that.
Like, and part of it is like, oh, well, we need the speed in order to react. And I'm just like, yes, the inverse is also true where you abuse that speed in order to be proactive. And that's why a lot of proactive, like OTK based decks, are the ones where it's just like, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to option out using my delay options, search my deck, find all my pieces, move out, pop all my delays, and then kill you in the single turn. I think that's not promoting good, healthy gameplay. When I understand that these cards were supposed to help fix certain issues, it's just like what Nikki said, they're kind of overtuned to be more of a problem than what they're actually fixing.
Yeah. So, real quick, flashing back to the ears bit, I just did a little more research. So we could actually for like option deletion kind of thing, we can actually kind of do it like an Arcadiamon Eater, because Arcadiamon and Eaters are actually closely related according to all the data I'm seeing. So if they make a deck like that for option based deletion or splashable in, I could see it. You know?
I can see it. That's not necessarily my job to try to fit the lore to it, but I think Eaters would be an appropriate way to do it. Because I don't like delay is just such a weird thing where I liked it at first when it was actually fair and balanced, and now that we're getting into the unbalanced part of delay because we can't interact with it, and it's just literally a second option you are getting for free, zero downsides. Now it's starting to become a little bit more of a problem.
Yeah.
Because like you look at a card like Biting Crush, 6 or 8 memory, kill a dude. Fine, we've seen that. Gaia Force. But now you get, oh, and I just so happen to be able to play Leviathan for free. And I'm just like, whoa, hold up. So not only are you killing my dude, you also get to spawn a guy that now kills another dude. Like, what's wrong with this picture here?
The answer is everything.
Right. And like, you could... The funny thing is, out of the top 3 decks that we currently have that are making up the cornerstones for the BT15 meta, Red Hybrids is actually the most fair, which to me is hilarious because it's not abusing it's sure abusing the trash, and it's also abusing Ukamon. So it is hitting 2 of those key problem points that I was talking about. But the fact that it's not overtly doing anything incredibly stupid is kind of just funny to me, where it's just like, Red Hybrids is the strongest, most fair deck. I'm not cheating anything out for free very often. Most of the time,
I was about to say.
like, I'm not cheating out a level 6 or a level 7 for free. Like, the most it's doing... Yeah, the most it's doing is replaying its level 3s, maybe replaying its Tamers, and the Warp Digivolve from a Tamer into a level 6. That's about the worst thing the deck is doing, and compared to some of the other stuff that other decks are doing, it's nowhere near as bad in terms of, like, how stupidly egregious this is, and, like, unhealthy, in a sense. Because, like, I've seen Numemon plays where it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna swing 2 checks, Digimon gets deleted, play Numemon effect, do something, gain memory, now I have more memory to work with, Digivolve into level 7, get itself deleted, do other stuff. I'm just like, this... It's just such a... It just abuses so many different things to be astronomically stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the other... Like, I almost want to do, like, an experiment where it's just, like, the 3 problem things that I'm having with the game, how many decks are actually abusing them in the top slots? So, Lucamon is definitely abusing 2 of those 3 points. Sometimes it's abusing 3 of those 3 points, but we're not playing Ukamon. It's definitely abusing delay, and it's abusing the trash. But it's a little bit slower compared to some of the other decks, so that's
Mirage
whatever.
Is abusing delay.
Yeah, Mirage is just abusing delay. That's it. That's the only thing it's abusing.
For free Thomas, when you're using, like, the problem is we replaced that Galga, but it's just the memory gain of being able to kind of redo turns. Like, burst, bounce Thomas back to hand, it's free, bounce your Digimon.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
Memory,
Like, cheating on memory,
Thomas.
like, cheating on memory is, like, borderline the definition of Digimon at this point. Like, if your deck natively just does not cheat on memory, you're already playing at half the pace of some of the other top decks.
And this is why Massimon sucks ass, because it doesn't cheat on memory.
Yeah, Machinedramon really doesn't cheat on memory either, but, like, I'm just looking at the list, and a lot of these, usually most decks are going to try to abuse the delay options if they can, because, you know, what deck doesn't start with 4 training, 2 boost? Like, I think that's already poor design when portions of my deck are already predetermined based on the staples that are being played and the playstyle of the deck. Like, I think that's already pretty poor.
Scrambles are going to affect ratios, because some decks need the scramble
to
recover, and other decks are like, I don't need scramble, that's what training is for.
That's why the Gallantmon, once it gets red scramble, actually becomes really disgusting.
Well, he's also getting an ace later that's also, like, he's getting technically 2 aces that are also both pretty good.
That stupid Megidramon is beyond so good.
Yeah, but Digimon definitely has a huge tempo issue, and I think, like, this format is literally the starting crux. I guess technically BT14 was the starting crux to the tempo issues, because literally outside of Mirage and outside of it was Mirage, Royal Knights, and Shine Greymon that were the biggest egregers and offenders to like how Digimon cheats on tempo. And that's why those decks stood out a lot. And Greymon started falling off because their big like super tempo booster got hit. And the deck just has some natural consistency problems with the different colors it's running, the different tamers it's running, and it being an X antibody deck needing more pieces to be found. So like it just has some slight consistency issues that are holding it back from being as good as just something like Shine Greymon, where it's just cookie cutter. It's something super simple, has all the consistency in the world on top of all of the power in the world. So it just like we're entering a phase where whoever can cheat better in terms of like cheating on the resource system of the game usually is going to be in a meta competitive spot, if not one of the better decks. Because just looking ahead, not too far ahead, but looking into BT16, like Bugs can move insanely fast. Rapidmon still moves insanely fast, especially since they're now abusing Patamon. So it's just like, oh yeah, I'm just actually just the best yellow vaccine using an armor package. Like we're seeing a lot more decks try to cheat as much as possible in terms of like what the foundation of the game was set out to be. And I'm not necessarily sitting here and saying that's a huge problem. It's just when you're looking at the big picture, it's becoming a problem. And it didn't even have to be this way. Like, I want to almost imagine a world without the training boosts. Like, I'll probably do a thought experiment of that later. But, like, what would decks look like and how would the game function without Ukamon and without the training boosts? Or the training cards?
I mean, we could do something like that on Drossel one of these days.
Yeah,
And just
like that's
try that out.
That's something, and I could also do it during like my Saturday events. Like, hey, I'm curious, what the game looks like without Ukamon or without the training cards. So I don't know, but this meta is definitely going to be one of the longer ones, just because BT16 doesn't come out until the end of May, so we still got a while's way. And like I said, 17 total events for the rest of BT15. We're just scratching the surface here, but I do think so. Getting slightly back on track to try to wrap things up a little bit. So looking at the current data that we have, where do you think BT15 is going to go from here?
It's obviously going to be going strictly to a control-based meta, to where if you control better, you basically have out.
I think we're heading into triangle meta, and like, I hate to say it, I kind of like tier 0 formats because you're just you know what you're doing, you know what you're against. Like, preparing for Nats was such a wild ride because we knew what the 3 decks that like could blow us out of the water were, and it was like we knew what our matchups were, we knew what we were doing. We're like this is such a diverse meta where like there's too many good things that could just play fair, not fair. Like you have Levia, Nume, you have Setcon. Okay, we have Setcon. We don't like
we don't refer to the devil, okay?
Yeah, I don't like to speak its name.
Mirage, like there's so much here that like we're diverse, but we're heading into like, can you beat Levia? Can you beat Bunnies? What beats you?
Yeah, they're the cornerstones. Like, so like we saw as I mentioned earlier, like we have a whole bunch of one-offs. It's how successful are those one-offs going to be repeatedly to actually prove themselves outside of just getting lucky? Because, like I said, in some of our more private discussions, like when I was deciding my deck, I honestly think Diva is like one of the best decks to take to try to counter the meta, because it does counter a lot of the better decks, but it still does have bad matchups that you could still run into, which is part of the problem. So like, yeah, in wider formats you can't prepare for everything, but I think Digimon has this really weird university to it. Like universal system where certain decks basically fall into an archetype, and then you could just see like what's more prominent in this type of archetype. Like Mirage and Shine, still at the heart of the things, are OTK based decks. Like, yes, they have different like mid levels of play, but at the end of the day, they just swing for all the security. There's still a lot of decks that do that. And Numemon and Red Hybrids technically are fulfilling a very similar role on just being like a low to the ground aggro deck. It's just they have alternative ways of removal and playing their stuff, which is the determining factor. But that doesn't change the fact that they're both, at their core, aggro-based decks. Then you got Leviamon and Security Control as like your big control-based decks. So like I feel like if we, it's more manageable if we could see what is under what type of style of play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's at least how I quantify it. But as far as like where the meta is going to go from here, I honestly think like the Numemon Leviamon hype train is going to ride out through this entire format. There's like zero reason why I don't think that they're going to do insanely well for the 17 events that we have left. I think Red Hybrids could teeter off depending on how successful Divas does, because Divas just freaking eats that deck alive. It's not even funny. And then, honestly, I actually think where the meta currently is kind of just where it's probably going to continue to grow and stem from. I don't necessarily see any, like, huge, insane shakeups to the current state of things. So, like, I'm just going to pull up the image for anyone who's actually watching the video. Like, this is, like, this right here, my final standings column, where Levia, Numemon, Red Hybrid, that's going to be your tier 1. Like, those 3 decks are going to be the most prevalent and most powerful. Then you have Diva, Lugamon, Mirage as, like, the next tier, tier 2. And I think, like, that's probably not going to change. Maybe Lugamon's going to fall off, because he has a tendency to. Then you got, in, like, tier 3, Yellow Vaccine, Shine Greymon, and something else. I don't necessarily think Yellow Hybrids is going to stick around. But I feel like there is something else that could easily go into that like tier 3 category. But I think like this is just a pretty solid list of some of the best decks in this current format.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean. Prepping for Nats was a pain. Prepping just for some of these nationals is a pain, because I way overthought on my deck of choice that I'm going to be playing for this format.
Yeah, I agree on that. At this point, I'm kind of already settling on the alpha, because I know how to play alpha. I know how alpha goes into each one. Even into 16, it's going to be alpha until I can get all the stuff for Magna. And that's going to be a hot minute, because Magnas are secrets and have the lowest pull rate. So it's a good luck, have fun.
Yeah, the Yellow Vaccine armor deck for BT16 is going to be an absolute nightmare to build, needing both secrets on top of just all of the other like money sink pits that can go into it. But that's not for a while. And I think
that's probably what we'll do. We should probably talk about on the next episode, is just the 16 EX6 meta and what's to come.
Most people like the in the now. So I guess like anyone in chat or anyone in the videos, type down in the comments below if you made it this far. If you want us to do a specific episode talking about the future. But most of the time, like just being in the YouTube space for as long as I have, most people don't care, and they do that research themselves. So they don't like it being given to them, which is why a lot of the big YouTubers just don't even waste their time with future data anymore. If they really wanted to, they just look at a Japanese channel and like East, and that's why East is so popular, is because he's like the only one who's doing it, because to him it's the current meta, but to all of us it's the future. So it's like, if I were to try to do it, I would not have the same level of success, because to me and all of my viewers, that's the future. So there's this like really weird dynamic, but that's all going to go away when unification happens anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, but uh, BT16 is going to be really interesting when we get up there, but we still have a long ways to go before we get up there. And I think this meta is probably going to end up being one of the more diverse metas. I think there's a lot of capabilities for a lot of decks to top. I just don't think that they're going to actually have any staying power like Gallantmon, as much as I love him. And I thought he was like the Giga Chad Brain anti-meta pick. I don't think anyone else could do successful with Gallantmon.
I've tried it. No.
It's so
No.
hard, and like it does, like there is just a big luck factor when it comes to events and just seeing your matchups. Like theoretically, the matchups that I saw, I should have done better in my last regional run, but RNG kind of said otherwise. But the RNG of my opponent spread was almost exactly what I wanted. So it's just like, yeah, I just lost to actual RNG instead of opponent RNG, because my opponent RNG was pretty good. So there's just a lot of complicated things that go into events, but I always try to overanalyze things, whether that's actually good or not. It's whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Maybe we'll do podcasts on my channel to where we'll talk about future instead of doing it on this channel.
you could.
Well, we're guests here for one. Teddy was anywhere.
Yeah,
We're just here because he wants his teammates' opinion on like where this meta's at, and like I said, I hate how diverse it is, just because you can't play against everything, and like heading into 16, we're gonna be a little bit more diverse, but it's still the thing of like
It's not gonna be a little bit diverse. What the hell are you
No,
talking
BT16 is definitely looking to be more condensed than anything. Like, I honestly think that's going to do some massive consolidation in terms of what's actually viable. Like, right now, because things are still kind of loosey-goosey.
It's gonna be bugs or nothing.
No, Bucks is definitely going to be in the upper echelons. But, like, that's why in, like, my final standings column of my data that I posted on my YouTube community tab as well. So you have access to all of this in case you are a podcast listener on my YouTube. In my community tab, I have all of the images there as well. In my final standings, like, that's why I just gutted trying to do the one-ofs and trying to organize them. Because to me, right now, they don't matter. They actually do not matter. And the final standings shows like these are the decks that I actually care about preparing against. And obviously, as more events come, I'm going to keep updating this, give you more information as things develop. But as of right now, if you were to prepare for BT15, Numemon, Leviamon, Red Hybrid, Diva, Lugamon, Mirage, Yellow Vexine, Shine Greymon, those are probably the top 8 decks that I would expect to see and play against. And then obviously some like fan favorites like Leomon is something you obviously would want to like keep in your back pocket and prepare for those as well. But depending on your deck, it might actually not even matter. But yeah, there's just a lot of really strong decks out there, and it is harder to prepare. But I think like just taking this type of a data, consolidating it, and understanding what it means and how to use it is one of the most important parts when it comes to reading what you're going to be playing and what you're going to be most likely playing against.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts, guys, before we close things out?
No, I'm pretty good. You next?
We said everything.
So with that, I think this is a good time to close things out. So I want to thank everyone for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the Cut Podcast, as I already mentioned before, please make sure to leave that like, rating, follow, subscribe, review, whatever on whatever platform you're currently watching or listening on. Make sure to also share it with others on social media so we could get that spread going. And I want to thank everyone again for listening, and we will see you next time.